I was standing in my garage one evening. My hands were absolutely busy. My jaw was clenched tight, and I was muttering underneath my breath. We had just had another argument. I don't even remember what it was about today. What I do remember is that feeling, the frustration, the heat that was in my chest, and the story that I was telling myself while I was out there in the garage working. Why does she always have to be like this? Why is she always fighting? And then the thought that really I'm embarrassed to say out loud right now is maybe she's not even the right woman for me. I was out there in the garage completely convinced that she was the problem. I was wrong, but I didn't know that yet in my life. And that gap between what I believed in the garage that night and what I eventually understood, that's what this episode is about. It starts with one word that men have been using as a weapon for decades without understanding what it actually means. And that word is submit. This is the Sacred Gentleman Podcast. The Sacred Gentleman is a movement that calls men out of comfort and back into God's design. We form leaders of presence, purpose, and generational legacy. I'm Steve Baumgartner, your host. Let's begin. I've had this conversation so many times that I've lost count. Different men, different settings, same stuff point. But there's one day that really sticks with me. I was at men's event. It was post-session. I was standing around talking to a group of guys. There wasn't anybody famous in this crowd. It was just real guys doing real work in their lives at various levels. Now, one of them, good guy, became pretty good friends with him over time. A guy with some solid faith, but was struggling in some areas. He said this in this crowd. He goes, I told my wife that the Bible says that she's supposed to submit to me, and she just shuts down. And I don't get it. And I've been through this, guys. So I asked him one question, one clarifying question, just one. I asked him, dude, what's your mission? And he looked at me like I was speaking a different language. That look right there. That's the whole problem with this submission thing. That's the crack in the foundation that everything else crumbles through. Now, this guy, in all honesty, thought that he was quoting the Bible verbatim. He thought that he knew what it meant. But let's go to the source. Because if you're going to quote the Bible, you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your spouse to know what it actually says and what it actually means. So I don't natively speak Greek. I just want to mention that right up front. So when I pronounce this, it's probably wrong. Anyways, the Greek word translated as submit in Ephesians 5:22 is hupotasso. Now, if you break that word down, it actually has two roots in it. You have hupo, which is under, and tasso, which means to arrange, to station, or to post. It was actually a military word. Troops arranging themselves in formation under the command of their leader. But here's what the picture actually requires. And this is the part that most of us don't think about. That formation only works if and only if the leader has a mission, a clear objective, a direction that the man can name and articulate. Troops don't arrange themselves under a man who is standing in the field with no orders. They arrange themselves under a command, under a purpose, under something that they can understand well enough to move forward in formation under a mission. To be clear, that's not under a title. It's not under a marriage ring. It's not under a man who showed up and declared that he was in charge. Under a man with a clear mission, one he understands, one he can articulate, and one that others can actually grab a hold of. Now, here's why that matters beyond this military metaphor. This isn't just theology, it's how human beings are wired at their core. Psychologically, people never align with things that they cannot understand. You can demand compliance, you can pressure someone into going through the motions, but genuine alignment, the kind where someone moves with you rather than being dragged by you, that only happens when a person can see the mission clearly enough to decide if they believe in it. That's how God designed us. Free will is not a glitch in the system. It's the whole point. A wife who submits because she was guilted into it or worn down into submitting, she's simply surviving, guys. She's not truly submitting. What you actually want is a woman who looks at where you are going and says, I'm in. I believe in this. Lead, my man. And she can only say that if there's somewhere to go. So this word, hupotasso, it's not a demand. It's a response. It's not something that you can command your wife into. It's something that she has to choose or not choose. Based on whether there is actually a mission she can see clearly enough to put herself under. Now, that word submission, it actually means under the mission. Guys, if there's no mission, there's nothing to submit to. There's no mission to go under. You're not asking her to follow your leadership. You're simply asking her to follow your mood at that point. Here's a part of this that nobody's talking about. Most men, when they get married, they don't even have a mission. You know, we go out there and we find this woman that we claim to love. We make a covenant with her, and we assume the assignment, the calling, whatever you want to call it, will figure itself out over time. And then 5 years in, 10 years in, we wonder why we have no peace in our own home. We wonder why our wife feels distant. We wonder why we feel like a stranger in our own home. That tension that you're feeling, it's not a marriage problem. It's a mission alignment problem. A man without a mission, he doesn't lead well. He reacts. He doesn't build well. He defends territory. He doesn't provide direction well. He simply manages problems. And his wife, who was designed by God just like him to step right alongside his mission with him, has nothing to align with. And that's in her design. So she does what any capable person does when there's a leadership vacuum. We've seen it at work, right? When there's a lack of leadership, someone fills that void. And she doesn't fill it because she wants to. She fills it because she has to. And then this man, me, you, that's when we want to quote Ephesians. And we talk about how, woman, you're supposed to be submitting to me. Guys, can you hear how ridiculous that sounds? Let me ask you a direct question now. And I want you to answer it out aloud. Right now, wherever you are. The question is simple. What is your mission? Now, before you answer, I want to make sure that we got this clear. I'm asking you what your mission is. Not what you do for your job. Not what your income is. Not your role in the company. What is your mission? When I say mission, I mean the assignment your creator puts you on this earth to carry out. It's the reason you were specifically made for this world, with your specific history, your specific wiring, and your specific wounds. In essence, why are you here? If you stumbled on that answer, or if you were completely silent and didn't have an answer, then here's the hardest thing that I'm going to say in this episode. You cannot ask your wife to submit to a mission that doesn't even exist. I need to take you back to my garage for a minute. back to those dark days. That wasn't just a story about an argument. I was actually painting a picture of a man that had no mission, who was trying to lead a woman who had nothing to follow. You know, guys, I was out there. I was crushing it at work. I paid the bills. I had a plan to get out of debt. I was doing everything that a man I thought was supposed to do by every external measure that there was. But inside, I had no center. I had no north. I had no sense of what I was actually built for beyond that next paycheck and the next problem to solve at work. And the tragedy is I didn't even know that that's what was even missing from my life. I just knew that things felt wrong. I just knew she seemed resistant to me. I just knew that we kept ending up in the same fights, the same distance, the same cold silence after the garage door shut. And I thought she was the problem. Guys, the shift didn't come in that one moment. There was no lightning bolt that came down from the sky to tell me I was wrong. It was more like I started doing the work on myself slowly. I started asking harder questions about who I was actually made to be, not what I had fallen into, not what my job required, what I was built for. And there was something that started to change inside of me. It didn't change inside of her. It changed inside of me and how I carried myself and how I walked into a room and how I spoke to my kids. It showed up in the steadiness that started showing up where the reactivity used to once live. One day, my wife actually came to me and she said, "You know, Steve, you're becoming the man that I can follow, the man that I can submit to." And then she looked at me straight at me and she said, "And you damn well better keep on acting like it." I want you to sit with that for a second. My wife can be brutally blunt at times, and I appreciate that. But sometimes it hits you in the chest like a sledgehammer. So sit with that for a second. My wife wasn't applauding me, and she was raising the standard. She was telling me she could finally see something worth following. And she was also telling me that the weight was now on my shoulders to keep on being that man. Guys, that's not the type of pressure that you can just simply walk away from. That's the pressure that you have to grow into. That man I was out in that garage, muttering, blaming, ready to write my wife off completely, the wrong person, that man had no mission. He only had complaints. He only had frustrations. He had a Bible verse that he was ready to deploy about submission, but he had no mission. And once again, you cannot ask your wife to get under something that doesn't exist. Let's bring this back into present day. Last night, I was discussing with my wife about an investment that I was interested in. When I said the name of it, I could see her face tighten. And she told me, she's like, "Steve, my friend's husband did that, and it was a disaster." Now, in past days, I would have gotten defensive. I didn't get defensive last night. I did, however, tell her that I had done significant research. I had told her that I talked to people who had been wildly successful with it. And I believe that I understood what separated their results from her friend's results. And I laid it out calmly to her. I explained to her the differences in between success and failure. And she looked at me and asked me one question. She said, "Do you believe in it?" And I didn't hesitate. I said, yes. I said, yes, but I still have a few things to research before I fully commit to it. And she responded back by simply saying, "You know what, Steve, if you believe in it, I trust you." That's it, guys. That's the whole thing. It wasn't a boot camp exercise. It wasn't a theological argument. It wasn't a verse dropped on the kitchen table. It was trust built from my track record. It was her knowing my process, her believing in my discernment and voluntarily placing herself under a decision because she had watched me earn the position of leader over time. That's hupotasso in a Tuesday night kitchen conversation. That is what submission actually looks like in practice. And I'll tell you what it's not. It's not blind. It's not passive. It's not something that you can demand. Quite frankly, it's something that you earn, and you have to keep earning over and over again every time that you show up with clarity and conviction. Scripture doesn't say, wives, submit to your husbands because they gave you a wedding ring. I want you to read the full chapter here, men. Ephesians 5, verse 26, that comes right on the heels of verse 22. Because what it says here is, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Now, before I go on, let's talk about how Christ loved the church. I don't know if you remember the Passion where Jesus hung up on that cross with nails through his hands and feet, with a spear in his side, with a crown of thorns. That's how Christ loved the church. The call on the husband, it's not authority, it's sacrifice. It's having a mission. It is laying your life down for that thing that you're building together with your spouse. Christ didn't command the church to follow him by issuing some decree. He earned through presence, through sacrifice, through clarity of purpose that was undeniable. Man, your wife's not being stubborn. She might not know it, but she's actually being discerning. And if something in you bristled it there, that's worth sitting with. The man who has a mission doesn't need to demand submission. The mission creates the gravity. And people, including your spouse, including your wife, they naturally orient towards the man who knows where he's going. All right, it's time that I land this plane. If you've been carrying frustration about your wife's respect or what you see as a lack of it, I'm not asking you to look at her. I'm asking that you look at yourself first. Can you say that your mission is solid? Can you say that your mission is one that you could repeat out loud right now in one sentence, not a long paragraph, not on a vision board, but one sentence? What were you put on this earth by the Almighty to do? If you know it, the work is simply living it at this consistently in every domain of your life, your faith, your marriage, your fatherhood, your finances, your body, your community, all of it. Your mission doesn't stop at the office door. Now, if you don't know your mission yet, it's not a failure, guys. However, it is a beginning. The man who admits he doesn't know his mission and goes looking for it is already ahead of the man who performs through confidence that he shouldn't even have. My mission, personally, is to come alongside God in restoring men to their proper place. I help them find their assignment. I help them unlock what's already inside of them, and I help them deploy it out in every area of their life. And as you can see, I do a lot of things around that mission. Hell, this podcast exists for that very mission. That mission is why everything I do is built the way it is. And when I live it in my marriage, with my children, in the way that I handle my finances, in the way that I take care of my temple, my wife doesn't have to be convinced to trust me. The mission that I'm on makes the case for me. Guys, if this episode hit somewhere real, If you heard the word mission and you felt the hollowness of not having one, the sacred code exists exactly for this. It's a 12-week masculine formation process built to help you do what we talked about today, to find that mission, articulate it, start living it in every domain. Guys, the sacred code isn't self-help. It's far from it. It's not a course. It is a formation program, a transformation program. Reach out to me if you're interested. If you're not ready for the full thing, I encourage you to join the Knights of Order. It's the brotherhood of men that I built that do this work together. It has a very low barrier of entry, but a very high standard of excellence. Either way, don't leave this episode in your ears. Take one step in becoming the man that you are meant to be. Man, if you're listening right now and you've been frustrated with your wife, I'm not here to tell you that your marriage or any marriage is easy. I'm also not telling you that she's always right. What I am telling you is that you need to look at yourself first every time. Because quite frankly, the man who knows his mission, he doesn't need to demand anything. He just leads. And the people who love him, they follow. There's a natural order to it. Your wife, she wants to trust you. Your kids are also watching to see if you're worth following. The question is not whether they will submit. The question is whether there is a mission built worth them submitting to, for them to get under. If you don't have it, go find it. Contact me if you need some help. I'm Steve Baumgartner. This is The Sacred Gentleman. I will see you next week.